So obviously we just had a major hurricane event here in the state of Florida, and like many homeowners, I'm assessing damage and taking a look at things. We're fortunate, we're here in the office, we're working, and we're helping people to understand what their insurance policies cover and what they don't cover. It's very important because, quite frankly, most of us didn't spend much time going through the policies, but now as the events have unfolded, we really need to understand what's covered and what's not. There are two particular areas I want to focus on right here, and that is the effect of water damage and what elements of water damage are covered by your policy and what are not covered by your policy. And then the second component are your duties as a homeowner and as an insured as you go through the policy to understand what it is. Now, one of the most important changes that happen in policies are limitations on the amount of money that the carrier will pay for mold, fungi, and other damage. After they had mold claims and things like that, and the carriers were exposed to big payouts, they limited it pretty extensively, and so most of them carry a limit of either $25,000 or $50,000 the amount they'll pay for mold or fungi. What that means is if you've got flooding, if you've got any kind of water damage, your drywall's got to get replaced, there's going to be a limit on what they will pay. But just flipping through the policy, other things, don't even worry about your screen enclosures, pool cages, things like that. Most policies under Section 1A, under dwelling, exclude elements like tiki huts and bars and cages that are not part of your policy. So unless you've got a different policy and you're getting a rejection on that, don't spend much time kind of fighting over that. Another key element, people that are suffering damage are going to have to understand what the policy covers for loss of use for your house. And what the typical policy provides is we, the insurance company, will pay for alternative living if, quote, the place where you reside is not fit to live in, and any necessary expense and living expenses incurred by you so that your household can maintain its normal standard of living. That's an example of where there's a conflict between what the policy is and what your experience on the ground is. You may require damage. The insurance company may not want to pay for your alternative living arrangements, but this section in the policy which says they will pay so that your household can, quote, maintain its normal standard of living is important. And then the next section, payment will be for the shortest amount of time required for you to repair. So that's where that conflict between your insurance company and contractors, because if you get under a contract with somebody and they don't get it fixed right away, you may get some exclusions there. The section here 11, and this is what's going to be really important, the limit of liability for mold, fungi, dry rot, bacteria. Many policies have very limited coverage for these kind of things, up to $10,000, maybe a high one. Some of these there's 20 or 50, but what they provide, the insurance is they will pay $10,000 for the cost to tear out and replace any part of the building or property as needed to gain access for dry rot, mold. Think about that. You got flooding, you got a restoration company on scene right now, and they're starting to do all this work. But they may come and slam you with a $10,000 charge just for the rip out the drywall, and unless you limit that payment while they're on site and tell the restoration company, hey, I ain't paying more than $2,000 or $3,000 or whatever else. What happens is they come in, they start doing work, and again, what you think is reasonable, $5,000. Your insurance company thinks $5,000 is reasonable. The restoration company slams it with a $25,000, $50,000 amount. So don't get caught with that. Take a deep breath, get some agreement as to scope of work first before you enter into a contract. And critically, understand this: you can work with your insurance company to limit those costs, and they can help you to limit the cost so that there's an understanding between you, the property owner, and whoever's doing any work, so you understand exactly what that is. But again, under policy section C, $10,000 is the most we will pay for the total of all loss of costs payable for the loss of insured, and those amounts there. Another one, ordinance of law, we'll get to that later, but basically if your house has a catastrophic damage, your windows are blown out and things like that, and the existing or the new code requires you to come up to code, it's going to be a lot more expensive to replace windows that are hurricane windows, and if you don't have ordinance or laws, you're going to pay a lot more. Section C under exclusions. Exclusions is the really important place where you should focus your attention on. The typical policy provides what is excluded: water damage. Water damage meaning flood, surface, tsunamis, overflow, spray, any wind driven by wind or stern surge means your insurance company will not pay for that, and it's just not worth getting into a fight to over that. Although, quite frankly, part of the other conflict over years had been whether the damage was occurred or damage was caused by water or whether it was caused by windstorm. That's why it's so critical. Get flood insurance no matter what. It can be less than $500 if you're not in a high wind area. It can be higher if you are, but you got to have your windstorm, your hurricane, and importantly, that water damage and flood policy so that you're covered no matter what. Covered within that, again, they make it real clear over and over again, fungi and wood rot, the kind of damage that occurs after the fact is not covered. That's why it is important that you get people in there to get that stuff out. But again, big warnings, be careful who you're dealing with. Make sure you get, I find there's another interesting one. There's not coverage for nuclear events. That kind of concerns us, maybe not a little. Now, the second section, and this is so critical. In a policy, it contains a section within there. What are your duties? What's the insured's duty after a loss? Now, we spend a lot of time going after insurance companies and arguing and getting into fights with them over paying or not paying. But I want you to pay attention to what the duties of the policyholder are after loss. And that is, you have a duty to, quote, protect the property from further damage and to make necessary and reasonable temporary repairs to protect the policy. Don't get into a situation where your roof is ripped off and we got continued rains going on there, but you haven't done what's reasonable. And what might be reasonable is going up there with a tarp and putting on there. Obviously, be careful, rely on professionals if you can, but if it means you getting up there and tarping your whole house, there could be an argument that that's reasonable for you to do while we're waiting for carriers to get out there and make those decisions. Now, you also have an obligation to prepare an inventory of damages as quickly as possible. It's got to be reasonable, should be documented with phones and videos and all that other kind of thing like that, and to cooperate with the insurance company. I suspect that's not going to be a real big problem, that most people will be cooperating with your insurance companies. But the policies also carry with it all of the responsibilities that you as the policyholder have in your duties after a loss. But again, the policy carries an important exclusion, and that is they will not cover you for costs that you incurred voluntarily after a loss unless they have improved it. So be very careful in dealing with parties that are coming on. Again, we've talked about in other videos, one of the real big areas right now is assignment of benefits. So somebody comes onto your property, starts doing work, you sign a document assigning your rights under the policy to third parties. I would urge you to be very, very careful with that, because what happens is that sets up a lot of this litigation that we've posted elsewhere in these documents where the insurance companies are fighting with these restoration companies and others over the scope of the work, because there's all kinds of allegations of fraud and improper insurance claims, trade secret claims. That litigation is pending right here. It's fascinating, because it talks about how the insurance companies feel like they're being taken advantage of. They may very well be, because these restoration companies are going out there and just slamming homeowners doing work, and then the homeowners are complaining that the work that was done was not proper and was overbilled and excessive, and the insurance company shouldn't be paying it, but because that homeowner signed an assignment of benefits to that third party, now they've subjected the insurance company into litigation with these third parties where they're just the collateral damage set aside. So be very careful who you're dealing with now. Take deep breaths, work with your insurance companies, and give them the ability and the opportunity to handle the claims properly before you start getting involved with third parties.